We are back on another episode of Traditions and Trends. Like I said, man, I love getting to just sit down with you and chat through some stuff. If for some reason this is one of the first episodes that you're seeing, my name is Luke Relfs. I am the marketing director at Oracle Insurance. And with me, as always, I got our CEO, Will Stephanie. How you doing today,
everybody?
brother?
I'm good, man. Yeah, this is always fun, just sitting down and rapping.
Yeah.
Chatting.
Just getting to have some fun. So Traditions and Trends, been doing this for a while, and I love the point of this podcast is really to bridge generations with traditional expertise and trend insights. And that's just a fancy way of saying, hey, when we sit down and talk or when we have a guest on, we're looking to, just get into the genius of some people in your sphere, people that have been in business for 25, 30 years. I've had some buddies of mine on that are killing it in sales, or they own their own businesses or different things like that. And then we just get to spin talking about some good topics. We've talked about work-life harmony. We've talked about a bunch of different things. Purpose is coming eventually, and all kinds of great stuff. And so today we're talking about legacy, as we were just chatting about, hey, what do we want to talk through? We filmed some videos recently, even for Oracle, and just love the idea of getting to sit down and have a conversation. And that's why it's so great to do this podcast, just relax and have a conversation about some things. And so today we're talking a little bit about legacy, leaving a legacy. What does that look like to really think about that and steward your life well in the form of leaving a legacy for your children, for your family, your children's children, and then in your business? Obviously, you're in a different spot than I would say most people, being the owner of a business. There's not everybody is an entrepreneur or a business owner. And so when you think, hey, what's the purpose of my business? What kind of legacy do I want to leave for the people that hopefully continue to have this company go on? I know I was even listening to some things earlier today, and being a solopreneur is different than being a business owner, right? You want it to be to a point where if you were to leave for some reason, or you weren't involved in the company, that it could continue to run and do its thing. And so when you just think of this idea of legacy, what are some of the things you think about as far as how you want to be remembered by your family and in the business space and in our community here?
Yeah, this is an awesome topic, because it's something that for me has been more of an aha over the last couple of years. And I think really, if you think about the ultimate person who left a legacy, if you go to Jesus, right? I mean, we're 2,000 years still learning from that guy, right? And still trying to walk the way he walked and just get the wisdom that he had. And so I think, that's for me been the big aha moment of just getting to know Jesus over the last 3 years. And that's really had me thinking, kind of the thing that spurred this was I've been looking at my health as, because I don't want my legacy to be over tomorrow. I'd like to still be around for a while to spend more times with my kids, to make more of an impact in their life and make more of an impact at the people that I work with, and just people in my center sphere. So, I mean, really for me, it's been that, reflecting on, man, look at what Jesus, the impact he made, right? Of taking 12 guys, changing their lives radically, changing a bunch of other people, just, blessing people, serving people, and the impact that he's made, he's changed the world. So that's kind of just got me to reflect on, okay, well, what am I doing in my family? Am I in a community, in my business? Am I somebody that somebody would follow, or am I somebody, would I follow myself? So it gets you thinking, and that's, if I look back 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't have followed myself, to where now I'm somebody more that I'd follow, and every day, trying to make it better. So, but in my personal life, leaving a legacy, we're trying to change, with me and, with most parents, it's you want your kids to be better than you were. And when you're gone, I just recently, had my mother-in-law's funeral, and she left a legacy. I mean, as she was going through hospice, and we're sitting around singing songs and playing her favorite music and just talking about all the games we used to play with her and just all this stuff. And you're like, man, she left a legacy just because of all these habits and all these things that the family enjoys, and all the, she'd never complained going through the suffering, and her whole family is so positive in so many ways that you're just like, and I always wondered what was so special about my wife's family. And then when I saw her going through death the way she did, I'm like, that's what it was. It was her. She was the rock, and their dad's awesome too.
Yeah.
But she was just the steady rock, and implanted so many good things, and so did their dad. So that was just an eye-opening thing on the personal side. For a businessman and leaving a legacy. So yeah, like you said, if you're solo dolo, you don't have to worry about anything else. If you go, the business goes, right?
Yeah.
But if you have employees, and we learned so much from Pastor Todd on delegating to elevate. That's something that I've been really trying to do more of. Even just like handing over the marketing to you of just, man, I'm not going to be here. Who knows how long? So if I go, or if I decide to fade out of this thing and hand over the reins, like, I got to pass on all the skills, and then hopefully, I bring people out more specialized in, like you. Because if I was doing this solo, this would be a train wreck. It'd be just silent. So I got to pass those things on, and hopefully on that day when I'm either not on this earth anymore, or I pass over the reins to you guys, man, it's better. But I was able to teach you guys some things on the way out, and and just leave that legacy of the vision. That that's kind of that my place in the business is creating the vision, creating the inventing the whole thing, and then handing it over to you guys and letting you run with it. So
Yeah.
no, it's kind of part of it. I started really thinking about it, and my dad probably doesn't even know this. He passed away about 7 years ago, and his health was starting to decline. He put his arm around me. He's like, "Man, sorry for not being a better dad." And I'm like, he was a great dad to me. He was my dad, so that's all he had to be. But the thing that I started thinking about was like, man, I don't want to have that sense of feeling when I know I'm close to leaving this earth.
Yeah.
You want to be like, whew. I mean, you're always going to want to do more. That's just how we're made. But I want to walk out this thing till the end, just being like, okay, I did it the best way. And that's kind of why I've been looking at my health, like, how can I be here longer to make sure? Because we're still learning every day of how Jesus wants us to carry this thing out. So yeah, it's just been kind of an eye-opening thing. As you get older,
Yeah.
Sniffing 50 now. Like when you get there, you'll be like, "Woo, I'm about to the end." It starts creeping up on you.
Thank you so much for watching the podcast. We are going to get right back to it, but I just wanted to thank our sponsor of this podcast, Oracle Insurance. As many of you know, let's be real, everything is more expensive these days. Our gas, our groceries, our food, everything. But insurance doesn't have to be that way. If you're figuring out that you're paying way too much for your home, auto, life, any of the things as far as your insurance goes, go ahead and call the number on the screen, and I will also link the website in the description below. It's completely free to get a quote and just see if we can help you out and save you some money. But thanks so much for tuning in. Let's get back to it. I know the same is true for my dad, and luckily he has a different story in the sense of he got saved when he was 17 and has been pursuing Christ ever since then. But I know for him that's something that he talks about a lot nowadays too, is just, hey, the older you get, the more you realize I really want my life to matter, and not in this selfish way, but hey, how did I serve people? How did I love my family? Are my kids going to be able to take the things that I learned in the position that I was in and surpass that, and then hopefully do the same exact thing with their kids? And so I know something that's really big for him that he's gotten me into is just this idea of personal development, because like you said yourself, if you want to be a leader, you have to be someone that's worth following. And I think that's a great question to ask yourself is, hey, would I follow myself right now? Would I learn from myself right now? Do I serve people the way that I would like to be served? And so what do you think about nowadays as far as that idea of personal development? Are there things that you do to learn and grow every single day to continue to pass those things on in the way that you lead your business and your family? What's that look like for you to continue growing so you can then help others?
That's a good question. I mean, for me to continue to, keep getting better every day, just first of all, be in the Bible, keep just learning the wisdom and knowledge of what Jesus passed on to us. And then, reading more, I do not watch a lot of TV anymore.
Yeah.
And if I do, it's probably a YouTube channel, watching a little Skip Heitzig, David Guzik, Craig Rochelle, that kind of stuff. So real kind of nerdy stuff, I guess you'd say.
But learning essentially.
But I'm learning,
yeah.
Yeah, just learning God's lessons that he's taught us. And then, just reading books, Again, as you get older, reading, a book about Young Forever. It's by Dr. Hyman. It's super, I think that's his name. Super good book on just, man, how crappy our food is and how our lifestyle and how drinking affects you and all that stuff. But yeah, just trying to keep getting better. I know, like for you, you keep fine tuning your craft and you're just eating all that stuff up. For me, it's trying to get better at leadership, on how to, pass on the knowledge that I do have and how to, just continue to lead better in our organization and, reading, leadership books, those kinds of things, just to continue to, hone our craft and hone who we're going to be. And just so every day, like your dad probably says too, just like, how can we wake up and be better than we were yesterday?
Yeah.
And we're definitely, feels like some days we take a step back because some days you're just wore out, but just retune and stay close to God and see what he's showing you.
Yeah, that's all great stuff. I know you've talked about it a bit, but as far as the business goes, I believe your desire would be to pass on the reins eventually to Drew and have him take over some of that stuff. What comes to mind are those conversations that you guys have? Obviously, I don't believe that's something you're looking to do in the next couple years necessarily,
No.
but as time goes on, I'm not sure if you have some kind of time frame or age or exit plan or whatnot, but I would assume, and I've heard you talk about it a bit, that's a plan of yours to be able to let him step into that eventually and do that as he continues to learn and grow in that way. What's it feel like to think about that? How's it been, maybe even talking about that a little bit between the two of you guys? What would that look like to essentially hand over your legacy as far as the business and what you've been building, these last 11, 12, 13 years to him and have him run with that?
Yeah. We kind of talked about it too when we were talking about, you were talking about when your dad wanted your faith to be I think you maybe said you wanted your faith to be your own faith. You didn't want it to be forced. And I think a lot of people like that.
Yeah.
I think kind of same thing with Drew, my son being in the business. Like it's a unique conversation because it's like, I don't want to force it on him.
Yeah.
Being the son of a business owner, I think sometimes there's children that take advantage of it, right, and just expect it, and Drew definitely doesn't expect it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, on the other side, as the dad, I don't want to force it upon him. Because I know, man, I've struggled with it. Like we've had other business owners on here, and carrying all the weight of a business on your shoulders and all the employees and the responsibilities can be a burden sometimes. So yeah, the discussions have, fortunately with Drew and I and our relationship, I started coaching him, his basketball and football teams at a very young age, at first grade all the way through 8th grade.
Yeah.
So, we have a very good relationship. And he's still only 21. So still learning, but, we learned how to deal with each other. I'm not perfect by any means, and sometimes I can come off wrong or lead badly. And him being a young kid going through those ages, I got to learn how to push his buttons and how to motivate him and all those kind of things. So it's been it's been good that we had that experience and now working together. Because the worst thing you want as a parent having a child work for you is to have the work relationship ruin your personal relationship.
Yeah.
So it's scary, at times where you're like, man, on both sides, like, hey, I got to approach them about something at work, but I don't want it to affect our life outside of work.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, just passing on, I think, for that relationship is, on having him learn leadership. The best thing I can do is lead by example, right? And then also, is there things I can get him, at 21, I'd say you're 25, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You're jumping in, like eating up all this stuff that, on social media and how to be an influencer and stuff. Cause that's just what you are. He maybe is still trying to find out where he is. Insurance isn't the most exciting stuff. So
what are you talking about?
It's nothing that anybody wakes up or like graduate high school like, I want to be an insurance agent. But it's awesome. If you if you need a job, give us a call. We'll talk. But yeah, he's still, trying to figure out his place in it because there's a lot of different ways you can go with it.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to get him into, like we're going to a conference in September down in Nashville. So he's going to do a leadership conference that day.
Nice.
And just kind of start to, build up his confidence in it too. Because, man, I was 25 when I started my first business and I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
And by the grace of God, it was successful. But I had no idea what I was doing. So, and just, like we talk about on this all the time, it's just, I learned by mistakes mostly is why I'm at where I'm at today. And the biggest thing is just learning from him and being humble and be like, yeah, okay, I did that wrong. My bad.
Yeah.
And going on. So.
No, that's a great point. I'm glad that you frame it in that way. Cause I'm sure as a parent, that's a difficult thing. Just one to work with your kid in that kind of way, but then figure out when that time comes of like, hey, is this something you even want to do? Like, I want you to do this, but then on the other side of it, like you said, I know that's not his deal at all. Is like, oh yeah, like duh, I'm taking over this business when you're done with it or whatever. And so that would definitely be an interesting thing to walk through. But that's what's so great about what we do in how we seek to get better every single day is, hey, as long as we're being led by the Spirit and we're genuinely seeking to serve and help people as best as we can, things are going to get worked out, right? Someone else is going to step into that role if needed, or he's going to know that, hey, this is what God's calling me into. And that's what's great about it is like, you think we talk about it in the context of marriage or just in your life or anything. It's like, man, how do people do life without being led by the Spirit, just being like, oh, I just figure out what's best for me and I just make whatever decisions. It's like, man, there's something so much better for you. God's got something so much better. And he knows what's best for your future way more so than you do. And when you just have that humble attitude of, yes, I'm going to work hard, I'm going to acquire new skills, I'm going to seek to just continue to get better every day. But at the same time, I'm not going to take credit for everything. Like, oh yeah, like I learned all this stuff or I did this and that. It's just, hey, staying humble, knowing that God gifts people in different ways. And as we're continued to be led by him every single day, he's going to lead us to the right opportunities and all of that. And so I'm really thankful to have just this idea of legacy modeled well by you, by my dad, by all the pastors that are at our church. I think that this is something that's so top of mind for them. And so I'm sure some of those people are in the list for you as well. And you talked about your mother-in-law, just getting to see that and realize how amazing of a legacy that she left. And what are some other people as you think about that idea? Are there some other figures that you look at and think, man, these people are leaving a great legacy. Those are the people I want to learn from and replicate what they're doing.
Yeah. My in-laws, definitely, and my parents as well, but, in-laws is top of mind with just recently going through that. There's, our pastors at church, and they're all so different. Pastor Todd is just such a such a great leader. But then you look at Cap, who just, we can learn for everybody around us, right? And it's
Yeah.
the way he's stepping out boldly and professing like what God stands for and what's going on in the world and what the devil's doing. Like, you're just like, man, everybody. I mean, the way you step out and just talk, like, I'm just like, oh, I gotta be more like, hey, who cares? I'm just going to get up there. And let it rip. So there's a lot of people that you look at and you're like, hey, the legacy that they're leaving, tonight we're starting something at church with sharing your faith and Pastor Jim.
Yeah.
And man, look at the legacy, look at the lives he's changed. I mean, this guy, for those who don't know, Pastor Jim used to be in law enforcement and would share the gospel to people that he had in handcuffs in the back of the car. He was taking them to prison in shackles, and he freed them by sharing the gospel to them and them coming to Jesus on the way to going into prison.
Dude, I don't think I've ever heard that. I feel like I knew he was in law enforcement. Dude, I got to hear more of those stories. That's amazing.
A lot of people at the law enforcement shied away from him because they're like, they felt conviction around him.
I'm
right?
sure.
Because he's such you get around that guy and you're just like, I want more of him. Right.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like Jed, at City Serve, or Within Reach.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he's got so many stories of people coming to Christ as he arrested him. There was one guy, I think he blew up like a building.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, you got to ask him about that.
Dude.
But you see those guys and you're like, man, the lives that they've changed just by being obedient, being bold and stepping out. And if they had a conviction, Cap talks about that the first time he was at an airport and God was like, pray for that person behind you. And he's like, what? And he did it. And then you're like, whoa, and I've had that happen. I'm sure you've had that happen. Like, and just listening to God and where he's taking you and trusting that he's going to be there. Like how many times, like, I think I've told the story about stepping out and praying. I was like, I've never prayed out loud.
Yeah.
Especially in front of Denise and Pastor Todd's Denise.
Yeah.
And and then you just have to like, just slowly get your trust built up, and that's kind of part of leadership, just stepping out and slowly learning. But yeah, I mean, there's so many people.
Yeah.
Parents, just people you work with throughout the years. So yeah, it's been pretty cool.
Yeah. On a similar note, I totally believe that mentorship and the people that you have pouring into your life on a one-on-one constant basis is super key. Are there some ways that you're able to glean some wisdom from some people that are older and maybe have been married for 40, 50 years, have kids that are 30, 40 years old or whatever the case is? Like what does the role of mentorship play in you being inspired to continue to leave a legacy in your life?
Yeah. I mean, there's been so many. I think we were talking about it. The last podcast was, Kazan, when I did that experiment at Life Church, going back and looking at where my purpose was. It was because I've had all these old guys in my life, or older gentlemen, I call them that, that have poured into me, and all the way from my CPA to the first guy I worked with in insurance, and then my coach in high school. And just, not that they all had the perfect marriage, the perfect leadership skills, but they all taught me a little bit of something. And then when you put it together, you're like, wow, that's a lot. But, even my dad, he was far from perfect, but he was a loving, funny dude, just got a lot from him,
Yeah.
And, on marriage, just, man, that's been a learning thing for me for sure, being married 25 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just say surround yourself with good people. I would say the reason it took me a while to learn it is like some of the guys I was surrounded with weren't the best. But man, like my Wednesday men's group that I have, the average age is probably 73,
Yeah,
out of our
it's
group.
awesome.
Yeah. And that's why I love it. Is because,
Yeah.
man, these guys have so much wisdom of what to do, what not to do. But just the wisdom in that room is just, I could sit in there all day with those dudes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm about to say I need to pop in there sometime.
Yeah, you should, right?
I love that. I don't know what it is, but again, the older I get, the more I just figure out like, hey, you don't have to figure everything out by yourself. One, like we've talked about, you're being led by the Spirit. You're continuing to be in the Word and grow closer in your relationship with the Lord, and He'll guide you and open the right doors and all of that. But at the same time, that's why God is so big on community. It's big to surround ourselves with godly community. And I forget the exact framework, but it's just kind of this deal of, hey, you want to have friends that are your age that you're doing life with, and then you want to have someone a little bit ahead of you. And I think it's, like the Paul, Timothy Titus kind of deal, right? And so I love that when you're looking at being mentored and then passing it down and mentoring others, that's a great key for this idea of leaving a legacy. And so again, we've talked about it a little bit here, but when you think of maybe some practical steps for maybe someone that is thinking about this or hears this and hasn't thought about it a ton, what are just some ways that other people can really seek to leave a legacy in their family and in their community?
Well, I think if you take that exactly what you talked about, I think it's Barnabas, Timothy, and Titus.
Yeah.
But first of all, do you have somebody that's pouring into you? So if you don't have that, like, is there anybody in your life that you're like, that's who I want to be? If not, man, seek those guys out. I had a guy that just kind of happened to. He's getting into business, and so I've just been chatting with him about. We had coffee, and I'm going to start kind of pouring into this guy because, I want to pass down. That's why we do this thing, right? Pass down some of the knowledge I've learned over the years from other people pouring into me, mistakes that I've walked through, victories that I've had.
Yeah.
And so I'll be dumping into this kid, and then have somebody that you're walking through it with, right?
Yeah.
So you can be like, hey, man, and that's what our men's groups are, really, because we're all walking through this world together, and hey, we're trying to do it the God's way. And some days you mess up, and you got to be like, hey, man, I messed up. Cool, man. Let's pray. Let's do this. Let's get back on track. So you got to have people that you're walking through it with, and then who are you pouring into? So you got to have somebody pouring into you to fill your bucket up, somebody to walk through life with, and then who are you pouring on to pass on that knowledge to change the next generation? So, that's if you're looking for that, that's the first place I would start. Is find somebody that can pour into you.
Yeah.
And people will do it.
Yeah. No, there's all kinds of great places for that. And that's why I'm so grateful for the church. I just think when we do it right, when we set the right things up, the church is one of the best ways to get connected with people that can be mentors, people that you can be in community with, people that you can serve and help out with your gift set. Just so many different things. Like if we didn't go to church together and know each other, I wouldn't be working for you. And so when I think about
an example is like Pastor Todd, asked me to come have breakfast with some young guys and let's read a book. And I did not know any of you guys and asked Drew to come. So he was pouring in to me in a way, pouring into you. But then he gave us that example of like, hey, here's how you do it.
Yeah.
And look at what's going on.
Yeah. It's so cool. And that's another part of legacy is, hey, just be quick to be obedient and say yes to the things that God's calling you into, because you truly have no clue the potential impact and the things down the line that as multiple people, yourself included, continue to say yes, God knows what's going to happen, and He knows where things are going to go. And it's always an interesting thing to talk about, but there is a part to play on our end, right? We get to have as much of God as we want and experience as much as we want of His best
get off the bench
in our life. Yeah. And so it's like, hey, He knows what's going on. He is sovereign over everything that happens, whether people say yes or no to Him. But it's just better to be obedient and say yes. And
Yeah.
that's what's cool is like, oh man, if I never did that and I never said yes to that opportunity years ago or months ago or whatever the case is, man, this thing wouldn't have happened. And
Right.
so many times where you feel like you should maybe be in a different spot or whatever, that be further along in something, and God's just preparing you, right? He's preparing you to be able to leave a legacy in your family and in your community and in your workplace, and get the experience to be able to mentor other people and just all kinds of great stuff. And so that's what I think about when it comes to that. And one of the last things I'll wrap with is I love this phrase that OC, one of the pastors at our church, says, that when he thinks about legacy with his family, especially since that's really the heart of all of it, is he just says, I want to be respected the most by people that knew me the best. And it's just such a great way to phrase that super simply is, hey, what are the things you're doing? How are you investing into the people that are closest to you? How are you investing into and loving your wife? How are you investing into and showing your kids that they're important to you? I love what you said on one of the last podcasts we did about, man, our kids could potentially go looking for that importance and that love and acceptance in social media or in other people or in a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever the case is. All these things that may be good things, but certainly not the place to find your identity and find your sense of acceptance. It'll be just this never ending spinning wheel of you trying to gain fulfillment from these different things. And I love that point that you made. I think it was when we talked about just work-life harmony of like, hey, you got to spend time with your kids and with your family. And that's how,
because that's the legacy you're going to leave behind too. For a lot of us that don't have a business, like, yeah, you go to work all day, but your family's your legacy.
Yeah,
for sure.
so good. But I just love that phrase. It's so simple. Just, hey, keep that at the top of your mind. Is, hey, every single day, what am I doing to make sure that I can say that at the end of my life, that, hey, I was respected the most by people who knew me the best. And so if there anything else for you to add on that, man, it's so
to
good.
that point, you know, like for marriage, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is something that is so lost because like Denise and I do pre-marriage ministry.
Yeah.
And, you know, we really start to try to hammer this home because we didn't put that much thought into it. It was more, you know, loved each other, but hey, let's just the big ceremony and then get married. Everything's going to get better and blah, blah, blah. But to that point, like, the goal of marriage, like for every man or woman out there that's married, your goal should be as you take your final breath, holding your spouse's hand, that you're like, man, I did it till death do I part. I loved her through thick or thin, through sickness and health. Like that should be your goal every day you wake up. And, you know, even saying that, I'm like, oh man, I could do better at that. Right. Every day, just like making sure that she knows that she is loved and you know, and that's the goal. So, and that's, as a parent, that's our goal, is that our kids feel like they have, and that's what we want from God, right? Our Father,
that's what you also talked about at that same time. And it's so true. Yeah.
And that's why we have that yearning for that. And that's why we go searching for it if we're not getting it from the people that we should be getting it from. That's why the world is the way the world is, because there's a lot of fatherless kids out there.
Yeah.
So I think just like that in marriage, like think, okay, like what is your purpose in that marriage? Your purpose is till your last day on this place, you put them on that for your wife. That's your girl, man. You're her protector.
Yeah.
Till the day you die. And as a parent, you know, if you're going to have sex, man, be ready to be a parent and to
real talk.
Yeah. You know,
yeah,
right? Yeah. If you're just doing it for fun, you're doing it for the wrong reasons because man, you're going to change somebody's life for the better or worse. So like, that's why kids are out there, like,
yeah,
you know, just looking for what they're looking for because they can't find it in their parent.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just big. If you start a business, strap it on because it's going to be, it's not all going to be like people think like, oh man, you got a business, you got it made. Whew, no, a lot of times sit in this seat and you won't like what you're going to get, you know, but you have to be ready for that.
Yeah.
And you have to be ready. Like, and that's where having the wrong purpose and why you're doing something can be so devastational to why you're doing it.
Yeah.
So like, okay, what's, you know, and for me, that's what we talk about a lot is like when I started my business, a lot of it was for pride, for money, and that didn't work out. And then now my purpose is to leave a legacy, change people's lives, our clients, and everybody's lives through our business.
Yeah.
Like, how can I lift people up and then pass this thing on, and they're going to do it a lot better than I ever did it. But yeah, if your purpose is off, your plan's not going to go the way you want it.
Yeah.
So
good. I feel like you got fired up about that.
Dude,
I love
is.
it. I'm like, man, this dude's spitting right now. Like that's so good. Just the purpose behind why you do anything is so key. And it just leads back to the same thing we keep talking about, but there's just no way you can talk about these topics without talking about your faith, man. The purpose is self-fulfillment, or just you think it's a great idea, or it's your leadership or your business, or your decisions and all those different things, rather than just, hey, I'm going to just be faithful to say yes to whatever it is in the different seasons of my life that God's calling me into, right? And day by day, I love PT talking about that as well, that you don't want to wake up in the future and be like, how did I get here? And it's not a good, how did I get here?
Right.
And so I really think about that a lot, even as a younger person, that, hey, I want to make sure I'm doing the right things to get to later points in my life and not feel that way, and just feel like, man, look at God. Like, look at how faithful he was. Look at how generous he's been to me and my family. And it's just simply us saying yes. And that's how I think we leave a legacy, is ultimately day by day continuing to say yes to the things that God's calling us into. And that's how we will be 70, 80, 90 years old, looking back on our entire life and saying, man, like, it wasn't me that did all this. It was just me simply submitting to God for him to move in my life, in my family, and in my business. And so, man, lots of good stuff talking today. I love those practical handles for people. If you're somebody who hears this and really starts thinking about, man, what is the legacy I'm leaving? How do I do that well? It's getting in the word. It's staying connected with the Lord. It's saying yes and being obedient to who he is and what he's calling you into. It's having a great community of people around you in the same spot that you're in. It's having mentors to be able to pour into you and learn from people that are further along than you are. And then it's also taken some of your time to invest into other people. Obviously, we've really harped on the idea of investing into our family, into your wife, into your kids. But then also just another side of that coin is, hey, who are some other young men, young women, whatever the case is, that I'm being called and I have good experience to pour into. And so I think those are some great keys for people to make sure that they are leaving a legacy.
It's interesting too, as you went through all those things, not to pimp love church, but those are like our 5 S's, right?
Yeah.
Self-fed,
There you
stay in
go.
the word.
Yeah.
What's surrounded.
Come on. Surrendered, surrounded, spirit-led, self-fed, sent. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that's so
I mean,
good.
those are all the same things. If you do those, I mean, you're gonna leave a legacy.
Yeah.
And that's what Jesus did, right? He did all those things, and that's it.
So good.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, one more thing on, as you said, be obedient and stepping into things that God's calling you into. I think one thing as you continue to follow that out, you also have to have discernment and pray into those things of what God's calling you into. Because that's one thing I think I've done over the years, and I think some of the pastors will speak into this too, is it's easy to say yes. It's hard to say no to things.
That's good.
But you really have to. You can't. I was just talking to another dude about this. He stepped into serving a lot, and his cup's probably empty. And you have to. We're not going to be able to benefit anybody if we're saying yes to so many things and we're just like going through the motions and our cup's empty. We're not going to be able to overflow into other people.
Yeah, that's great.
So I think, that's one thing that I've learned over the years is to, really thoughtfully pray into things. And I still need to do it more and really say yes to the things that really, like you said before, I had passion, so we stepped into marriage ministry because that's a passion. But that, really have discernment in what you're stepping into to make sure that you don't overdo yourselves. And that's where our pastors have had to really do that, right? Because they can't be everywhere. They can't be everything. So,
No, that's a
little bit
great
more.
No, dude, that's a great point to end on. Again, if there's some people watching this at the very end, we love you guys. Thanks for being supporters
Yeah.
and checking all this out. Hopefully this is something that's valuable to you, just thinking about, man, how can you leave a legacy with the life that you've been given? So hit the subscribe button, hit like, and we will check y'all on the next episode of the Traditions and Trends podcast.
See ya.